A few months back, I made a video about the ACE AF1 trucks. I was a little disappointed in the size change because I had the ACE Classic trucks for years and years, and I finally wanted to try the AF1s, and the size change really just kind of messed with me, threw me off. However, ACE was super nice to send me a new pair of trucks. They actually sent me their brand new Hollow AF1, which is really rad. I got a size upgrade. I got the 66, so I didn't get the 60s, which I thought I was gonna get. I actually asked for the 66 last minute, and they sent me the Hollow, so I'm super hyped. This is a brand new truck. I haven't seen these really like at all. I haven't really seen anybody skating them. So I'm hyped to like set these up with. Also, I got something else to accommodate it. I figured why not get a new deck to set it up too. I got another polar board, of course. This is an 875. I wanted to grab an 88 eventually. They didn't have any with the wheel wells. I really like the wheel wells. So unfortunately, it's not the exact size I will eventually be riding with these 66s. Eventually, I'll be riding an 875. We'll talk about all the sizes and kind of how you can ride these trucks, or like what sizes you can do with different boards. There's so many different like combinations you could make. Like someone might think these are actually too wide for this board, but I'll get into like my preference and why I do like kind of a wider truck normally. And it does say on the hanger on these new Aces, it says right on here, it says 9. So you know right here, this is 9. Like I said, this board is an 875. Let's set this board up with these new Aces. We'll break these in, and I'll talk about in general what I think about ACE AF1s, because I have been riding these for a while, and I'm pretty hyped on them. I haven't really given you an update or review after we get these trucks set up and break them in. Take off sticker and initiate mash. Let's get that grip tape on there. I like sometimes when you get the grip tape a little warm, gets on there easier. First try, baby. Kind of like the yellow veneer on top too. It's nice. You never know what you're gonna get. I did order it from Polar website. Truck number one, the moment of truth. Will they fit? Of course they'll fit, at least to my liking. I think it's good to get a truck that has a little range, so you can kind of, vary your board size a little bit. First truck is on there. Looks pretty good. These feel so light right away, crazy. I'm not much of like someone that really worries too much about like weight in my trucks. More importantly is like how good do they churn, how they grind, how long they last. If you can get a light truck plus all of that, and it's super strong, supposedly these are the strongest trucks on the market right now, so. Woo. It's gonna skate good. Let's get the rails on there. I've been just screwing my rails in. That's something that I've been telling you guys not to do before, because it kind of messed with the rails, especially the rails I used to ride, like the Bones rails. They got loose really quick. So what I've noticed with these rails, these Santa Cruz, I think they're the Santa Cruz like Everslick rails, they've been doing really good. Point is that you can drill them straight in and they don't rattle. Haven't had any rattle points. Let's try to just drill them straight in versus like making holes or using glue or tape or anything like that, like I have used in the past. Yeah, I don't know if it's the nails or if it's just the overall shape and design of this rail on the inside, but man, it stays in there good. The wheels on there, and we're gonna go test these bad boys out. Woo-hoo. There we go. Rails on there, and it's still so light. I don't know why, I just feel like throwing my board around because it's so light. Sometimes I'll do, we talked about this before, multiple washers. Sometimes you do 2 washers on the inside, 1 on the outside. I actually have multiple washers, so I'm gonna do that. 2 more to go. Let's go ride this boy, test out, see how it feels. Something that I'm always advocating for is to not tighten or loosen your trucks right when you get them. I honestly think the best way to break in your bushings is to just skate the trucks right as they come. And this is really hard with Ace because their trucks are naturally like a lot looser than Indies. This was sort of my strategy when I used to break in independent trucks, was to not switch out my bushings. Because a lot of people switch out their bushings, and I will do that if it comes to that point. And I have to do it. Like I can't get comfortable on the trucks. So I'm gonna try to get a little break-in session here at the Bishop Skate Park and not tighten or loosen them right away. Just gonna ride them and see how that works out for me. Grabbing this board right now, lifting it up, it feels so good. It feels so much lighter than my previous boards, which is something I never really am concerned about, like I was saying earlier. But it is nice, like lifting this up with the rails, with everything on it. It's a big board too. Probably the lightest I've ever had a board. So let's get in our first session with the ACE Hollows. This is the third time that my wheel has gotten super tight when trying this lip slide. And to be fair, like maybe it's the new bearings. I didn't, well not new, but I put bearings in these wheels and they weren't in there before. So maybe I didn't get them all the way down. But this is the third time. So I'm hoping it's not axle slip or the axle is like moving or something. That'd be pretty weird first session, like geez. I don't think that's the case. I'm gonna assume that it's just the bearing issue right now. Where sometimes like your bearings, they get more, they're not all the way in. So when you skate, you hit your board sideways on the ground. You know, your axle, anything like that, it'll bang the bearing back into place sometimes. Let's keep trying the slip slide and see if we can get through it without this issue happening. I don't know, I'm gonna hope that it's the bearings so far.
These times have made me think of what is right and wrong. I'm putting on a new hat, feeling strong. I won't forget to tell you when it's done. Just be
I've always wanted to grind all the way off this transition, so like starting at the hip and then take it down. The hard part about it is like you need a lot of speed to grind all that, but then if you have too much speed, you kind of zing and fall off that end curve. So you don't want to have too much speed when you get there. However, you need enough speed to get there. And that's kind of like one of those obstacles is a good example. These trucks actually gave me the perfect grind. I guess the point here that I'm getting at is that can work to your advantage, because something like that, you go too fast, you zing out. When you go too slow, you just can't grind it because you're not going fast enough. These trucks, I think, have a smoother grind, I will say. I felt like I was able to like kind of sit on there and grind further without having to go too fast, which is pretty nice. First session under the belt with the Aces. Didn't tighten or loosen them, not at all. The only thing I did do is tighten the wheels. Hopefully that was just like a misfire. I'm hoping that I don't have any axle slip on day one. That'd be kind of weird. I don't think so. I think it was just a matter of like me putting the bearings in wrong. So we're gonna get a session with some of the boys and try some different surfaces. And then I'll round up like what I think about these trucks. I'll say right now, first session, so curvy, man. Like Aces churn better than any truck. There's no doubt about that. These seem like they had a extra good churn. So let's go meet up with the homies and hit some more spots and try them on some different surfaces. And then I'll give you at the end of this video an overall review of what I think about these trucks.
That's my guy.
It's like that, huh?
That was tight.
Big shout out to Party Pack Hardware, all the guys here at the House Skate Shop, everyone in Escondido keeping the spot alive. It's really rad. This quarter pipe behind me that we were just skating is so gnarly. Like, I'll show you the top of this stuff. It's crazy. Look at this. Cinder blocks. And then they just added transition up onto it, which is really rad. That's actually a really good way to build a quarter pipe. I'm sure they'll do other stuff at the end of the day. I think it's kind of cool having the holes on top. It's like little gators grabbing your feet. You kind of have to like be quick with it. Really rad spot. Also, the trucks. I haven't tightened or loosened them at all. So I'm still riding them as is. That's kind of working against me and for me in many ways. Obviously, I would love to have my trucks like right to their normal tightness right away. But in this case, I'm actually realizing there is a lot of advantages to having the loose trucks. Like getting up steep banks and getting down steep banks is really nice. Like there are good things. Obviously, it's like not as stable as I would like, but I think within like the 4th or 5th, hopefully by the 8th session, then I can adjust the tightness if I need to by then. So one thing that I knew about the lure pivs is that the Kingpin was getting loose and I'd bring my tool everywhere. The thing that I didn't do today is bring my skate tool, and my wheel just came off while I was inside the skate park. So yeah, there's that. Unfortunately, can't skate anymore because I don't have a tool to tighten my wheel. I'm gonna try to replace my AF1 Hollow Truck nuts with the classic nuts. I have these classics right here, and just switch it out. I'm gonna actually put the AF1s on here and just leave them on there and not really skate it, because I think it's just a nut issue. And I'll show you this new nut that I think the idea with this is that it's supposed to be more strong. It's supposed to be so that it doesn't strip, that there is more integrity. However, I think it's kind of done quite the opposite, unfortunately. Built that shed yesterday. So I think these bolts hopefully are just the issue, and I can swap it out with the classic bolts and have no more problems. Now, as you can probably see, I could actually tighten down these nuts with my hand all the way down to the wheel, to where the wheel isn't spinning, meaning there's no more threads, there's nowhere space to even make it tighter. I could screw it down, but then the wheel doesn't spin. So my point is, there's actually not too much space with the wheels on there to even be screwed on. I do have extra washers. I have like 2 washers and 1 on one side, so I'm gonna try to just do 1 washer on each side. Hopefully that will also help our problem. There's the classic ACE nut. This one's been bashed a little bit, and that is the new AF1 nut. Same issue though. I can tighten it down, almost past it. Same thing. I wanted to use the other nuts, hoping that I can get them tight, not being able to loosen them or tighten them with my fingers, but seems not to be the case. I just wonder if I should try skating them like this. This is quite the situation. Now obviously I can sit here and theorize why I think this nut is falling off my truck, but I did post on Instagram yesterday just to see what some of you guys would have thought, and there were some good, helpful suggestions. Trying the other nut was one of the first things I thought would have helped. That didn't do the trick. It was actually looser. I don't know if that's like an axle thing, like the axle's a different side than classics, but one thing I did help is just taking off all the extra washers. So hopefully now that I'm back at the park, we got our wheels back on, I don't have any issues. I'm gonna warm up like normal, check the wheels, make sure everything's good, and then try to hit some more of this coping and really like kind of you know, really test these trucks. I want to abuse these trucks before I give you a fair kind of review if you should or should not buy them, in my opinion. Ultimately though, I am curious, what do you think? What do you think is the problem with the nut issue? I'm just curious. I think the screws are staying on there. So far, so good. Haven't had any issues. Just checked it out. That's a quick little like 3-4 minute warm-up session. So let's get into some of the bigger bowls, some of the bigger transition. Really press these trucks. Something that somebody was mentioning to me yesterday in the DMs about the ACE trucks is that like maybe with transition skating, we're pushing that wheel off a lot more. It's kind of basically rubbing against the axle. I think that's what his point is, like pushing it against it a lot more versus street skating where it's like kind of more straight and forward. When you're skating bowls, you're doing a lot of like pressure to the side, left to right. Let's get on my helmet, let's jump in the bowl, really try to press these trucks a little bit further. I want to get this board slide so bad. It's so scary though. I will say the one thing with this truck that's really helping me is they're so responsive. So like I have to like turn to get into this board slide really quick from a lot of speed. So I'm like coming up at this angle and I'm quickly lapping it into the board. I think the trucks with the really smooth, the best turning of any trucks, to be honest, we all know that. They're really working to my advantage, even though it's really scary. Let's try to commit to one. Oh boy, did that feel good. Man, that felt amazing. It's always the ones where you're like about to give up. You're like, no, I need to give one solid effort. That was the one. I wouldn't feel that confident doing a board slide like that if the nut was gonna fall off. So I think taking the washers out has really helped. You know, clearly they're still on there. I can't, well, probably if I try hard enough, I could tighten them and loosen them with my finger, which is a little scary. Also got really strong finger strength. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, overall, so far, nuts are staying on there. They grind so good. Oh, I love the grind on these. Oh man, that was gnarly. First crash with the drone. I made a whole video about this new drone. Still getting comfortable with it, link above, and that was scary. Expensive piece of equipment to be flying into trees, but I want to get that shot. All right, so I've been riding these ACE AF1 Hollows for a few weeks now, so I can give you some honest opinions, kind of first impressions of this. This video isn't meant to be like a review on the Hollows, more so just to give you kind of an update, what I think about them. And there's some things that I like about them, there's some things that I don't like about them, but do I think they're worth it? Absolutely. I think they're a great truck. If you're in the market for a new truck, if you have an existing truck that works really good, I say stick with it. If you have like an ACE Classic or anything like that, I don't think it's worth upgrading unless you really want a light truck. But let's go into some of the things that I think are good about these trucks and not so good about them. So the first thing we can talk about is the width. I'm sure a lot of people are curious why I would get 66s for an 875 when apparently these are a 9-inch axle. And like I said in the beginning, the axles are marked on here. But if you look at this board like straight on, and when I ride it, like when I'm looking down at it, I can barely see that side nut. And like, when I say barely, I kind of have to look over to the left and right. Like when I look at my board like this, I don't see the wheel at all. And that's something to be considered. I think like too often do people end up getting a smaller truck than they actually need. Now, it's pretty subjective in my opinion, and like what is a fitting truck. So it says this 9-inch axle, right? Like the 66 says it's 9 inches, but to me, this board is an 875. Somehow I don't see the truck. So take that for what you want. Like maybe there's more edge to it. I don't know how they're doing the measurements, but for some reason when I'm looking down on this right now, this truck should be bigger, right? It's a 9-inch axle, but this board is an 875 and I don't see my wheels hanging over the edge at all. So I guess that's kind of my point, is like you can get a size that isn't really to your board size. So if you want to get like, you know, the 44s or the 60s, even though the 60s say it's an 8.5, I honestly think that they're a little bit smaller. Now that's just my opinion and how trucks fit the board. It depends. Like even when I look at it right here, like parallel straight down, I see that the nut is like almost even with my wheel well on these boards, meaning like it's not like I have a wider truck than I do have a board. That's the point that I'm trying to get at. If you're one of those people that like a little bit of that more hovering board syndrome where like the trucks are very underneath your board, then yeah, obviously it's going to be different for you. Me personally, the way I like my wheels in my trucks, I want them to be like almost straight down ideally, because I think having that more hanger space and like kind of more almost like a low profile board essentially when it matches. It's kind of like a race car. I always make that kind of comparison. Imagine you're like racing around corners and stuff. You want those like nice wide wheels so you have more like center of gravity. So I personally think a wider truck is more advantage into your just like mobility of your skateboard. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that like you're gonna get better at grinding or anything like that. I would say even more so with grinding, it might be harder because you have more truck, you have more lockup space, but I think it's a big advantage to the type of skating that I really like to do. So yeah, 66s on the 875 I think is a perfect fit. Next thing I wanted to get into is the Kingpin height. I had a few people hit me up and saying that the Kingpin actually caused them problems. Like even my friend Jonas was saying at the park, like his Kingpin was hanging up when he was grinding, like it was actually grinding into it. And with these, it actually looks like the Kingpin is a lot lower. In my experience, I haven't had any problems with like grabbing the Kingpin. Obviously I do truck bashes and I hit this area of my truck quite often, so it is already banged up, but I had no problems with grabbing it. I'm not sure what that is. You can always swap out your Kingpin. But yeah, no issues with the hollow Kingpin in my opinion. I think it did really good. It didn't get loose, didn't get tight. I didn't tighten or loosen my board at all. We'll get into that in a second. The biggest issue that I had with these trucks was the wheel nut. Obviously my wheels coming off is like a super big problem. But once I went home, I took all the extra washers out and I re-threaded the axle with the re-threader tool that ACE supplies you with when you grab the trucks. I was able to get it back on and I haven't had any issues. I'm not able to loosen it anymore with my finger. So that's really nice. It's on there, but it's barely on there. And I think the problem with this is the hardware. I think like Ace hardware for some reason isn't as quality as their trucks. That's just a subjective opinion. I'm not sure if they get it manufactured somewhere else. I've heard other people having the same issue, and I think what it comes down to is there's this Loctite inside of the nut and there's the 6 cuts in the nut. So the point is that you have to get that red thread onto the axle. And if the red thread doesn't get onto the axle, I think that's when they start slipping. You can hear it. Like it's not super like on the nut. I like to have them a little loose, and there's a reason for that. You can kind of like scrape your way, make your way out of tricks a little bit. You kind of get a little more churn out of them. So I don't like them super tight. However, I don't have much of an option on here. I can't have extra washers. So if you're someone like me that normally likes extra washers to kind of push your wheel off the truck so you get a little more hanger space, I think that is going to be problematic for you with these trucks. There's not enough like axle space for the wheel and for extra washers. I think that's what I noticed. However, obviously that means that there's probably more hanger space. This is just my experience with them, from the classics to the AF1 to the hollows. I just noticed it seems like there's just less space for your wheel to be on. So that's something to be considered. You know, if you have like really wide wheels, I don't think it's going to work out very good with these trucks, just simply because there's not enough hanger space. So that's kind of a downfall. And like I said, I like a looser wheel, but you know, I'm working with it. The good thing about these hangers with the Ace hangers is like they really do go edge to edge. So you know, it's not a big deal. It's just a learning curve for me. If you're someone that likes extra washers, that's not going to work out for you very well. I tried the classic nuts. They didn't work. They just free spin. So I do think you kind of have to stick to these nuts. Hopefully within the next couple of months, they stay on there really good. So like most Aces, once you get down to that axle, like you're grinding down the hanger and you get into that middle axle area, well, these are hollow. Typically, they don't grind very good. And then you grind through those, get some marks on them, and then they do grind good. So I'm interested to see what happens with the hollows. I guess we'll see once I grind them a lot more. Now, when it comes to the churning and not tightening or loosening your trucks, I have this big theory that basically if you don't tighten or loosen them, you just leave the trucks as they are, you're gonna have to like skate your board for probably an hour. Like that's an hour-long session, so that could be multiple sessions. But essentially what I think it does is it starts to adapt and warp to your type of skating. So if you're a street skater, training skater, whatever type of skating you like to do, you're a curvy, surfers type of skater, you go more linear, you like to go straight, I think that is the best way to break in bushings. You can obviously add new bushings and go through all that madness, but I think it creates another layer of just more complication, because then obviously you have different washers and nuts, and then maybe your kingpin gets higher. So there's so many variables with it. I think in my experience, these bushings are really good. You just have to break through them, and then they'll adapt to my type of skating. The other thing is, like, if I shoot my board out right now, it just goes straight, not to the left, not to the right, nothing like that. There's no weird bushing issues. So yeah, I honestly think just riding out your trucks, it's gonna suck for the first couple sessions, but at the end of the day, they last so much longer that way. You're not having to like constantly replace them and get like a new bushing when you're in the middle of grinding your truck down or something like that. I just think the best way to break in trucks is just suffer through a few sessions. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's a little bit of a longer one. Most of the time when I see YouTube skaters making videos, they like skate a product for one day. So I really wanted to abuse these. I will keep abusing them and give you an update. Make sure you scroll back up, hit that like button under the video, help me pay my bills, because I don't got a job right now. Subscribe if you're not already. Mash.